Welcome everyone. I think I've been asked to represent the human unintelligence in this panel in there. I've got a bunch of prepared questions, and when I say prepared, someone written them down, so I'm going to read them out. But we want to make this interactive. So if you do have questions, if you've got anything to contribute, please yell out, I'll come to you, or I'll repeat the question, and hopefully the panel will have some really sensible answers as well. But let's introduce our panel. So I just want to ask Suzanne first, and then go down the list to just quickly introduce yourself.
Thank you, Simon. Just check you can all hear me well. We're doing this microphone thing, so I think it's all good. I'm Suzanne Galletly. I'm Digital Skills Director at EXIN, which is the education partner for Scopism for the SIAM certification program, and I was also one of the co-founders of the SIAM community in the Netherlands.
Thank you. Chevonne?
Can you all hear me? Yes, good. So I'm Chevonne Hobbs. I'm a Senior Manager IT Consultant for a consulting company called Illuminet Solutions. I've worked in the IT industry for over 25 years and obviously do a considerable amount in service management, SIAM, AI and automation.
Yes, Chevonne started working when she was 3. And finally, we've got Steve.
Hi, I'm Steve Fleming, founder and CEO of Voxify. So what we do is we use AI to do experience management for IT. So what that means is we collate feedback from thousands and thousands of people across your organizations to make sure that IT, internal IT partners, and the business are all aligned on what the experience of using IT actually is for the end users.
Excellent, very experienced panel here. I've got questions in a number of blocks. Like I said, if you do have an additional question or something, just yell out and we'll try to include it in there. So looking at SIAM operation, the question is how can AI and automation reduce complexity rather than adding just another layer? I think, Chevonne?
Yeah, sure. So obviously when we're thinking about reducing the complexity in an IT operations environment, AI and automation are incredibly powerful. So from an automation perspective, if we start there, because that's usually where you want to begin, and that's by embedding AI and automation into your current IT processes. So where majority of you will be using an ITSM platform, whether it be ServiceNow, Halo, Avanti, any of those types of products, they will have the capability of turning on AI, but also the capability of automating some of those processes. My personal suggestion is that you look at the process flow itself for things like incident management and service request management as a start of 10. And you look at how that process flows and where you can embed the automation, and then that should then start to reduce some of those manual steps. And then you can then layer that with AI, and obviously from an AI perspective and reducing the complexity, a lot of the positives that would come out of that would be from your data insights through the incidents that are being recorded and the service requests that are being managed. But data is king, and I'm sure you've heard this many a times. So obviously, when you're looking at the complexity of incidents, making sure that the data is recorded in the best possible way with documented processes and procedures is where you'll gain the most benefit from using an AI tool.
Excellent, thank you. Just having a look at if there's any coming. So carrying on from there, data is king. But how can AI help us with collaboration across service providers?
So when you're looking at your tool sets, the best way to do that is to look at tool integration. So when you're using different suppliers, you're looking at your monitoring tools and discovery tools as well. So what tools do you have available? One of the things that I speak to lots of my clients around is their tooling strategy. So what tools do you have in place today? Looking at the capability and maturity of those tools, looking at what can be integrated with your suppliers so that when you're monitoring these services, AI is able to gather those insights and it's able to either identify when something might happen before it happens, but then sending the alerts to either to the supplier and to the person using those services, so then they can immediately see when there's a major incident, and then really focusing on how we drive that major incident to resolution.
Great, thank you very much. So, look, question, absolutely.
You wanted something interactive here, so I'm really curious, how do you actually, you say AI would look at the data, for instance, how would you actually do that? We have ServiceNow, it doesn't have any useful AI integration at all, and we're trying to look at Copilot, to look at the ServiceNow data, we can't find any useful ways of doing that. So have you done it, and can you give some example on more practical thing? How did you do that in any way?
So, I mean, obviously not knowing how your ServiceNow platform is set up. So ServiceNow does have the capability of AI.
Now assists.
Yeah, and but obviously it is down to the metrics that you're measuring on. So the information that you've configured the platform to capture in terms of the incidents and and how you're managing those incidents. And this is where it really comes down to the data. So when you're thinking about your categories, so your categorizations within the platform, the resolution times and the response times, so mainly resolution. So you're thinking about your SLA metrics. And then if you're benchmarking that, and then you're letting AI to analyze all of that data, what the root cause was.
But how do you do that? How do you get ServiceNow to analyze data, except for asking a direct question?
So have you set up the dashboards within ServiceNow?
Sorry, Chevonne, I think it's a good question, but I don't want this to become a tool-specific configuration. Sorry, Steve.
I have a point. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but there are tools where you can, depending on your use case, AI is very, very good at unstructured data, particularly natural language. So if the richer your source of data and the more messy it is in some ways, the better some of these specialized AI tools work on it. AI is also very good at a diversity of data, which is, beyond looking at a table or a couple of screens, which is the limit of humans. AI can look at millions of data points together, synthesize them, and come up with an approximately correct suggestion as to what might be going on, which can narrow down the work for humans. So, but I'd love to talk to you more about that afterwards.
Yeah. There's opportunity to talk. I think this is also great for the SIAM community to talk about specific experiences and examples. So thanks for your question. Basically, there's lots of opportunity, but we've all heard about the other side, the more ethical minefield. So, Suzanne, can you tell us a bit about the ethical challenges around AI and what to do with that?
Yes, certainly. I think there's a few I'd like to pick out, Simon. The first one is, of course, discriminative bias. We know that AI systems are based on historical data, and that data contains our own human biases. And unfortunately, AI systems can reinforce those and even amplify it. So that's definitely one of the main risks. A second one is around accountability, especially if AI systems are taking decisions in an automated way as part of your overall SIAM model. Obviously that can very much muddy the waters in terms of who is actually end responsible, especially if something goes wrong. And transparency is another one. If there's lack of transparency, especially with decision making, how and why a certain decision may have been made by an AI system, that can really undermine trust in the whole model. So I think there's some of the main ones. In terms of mitigation, it's all about involving humans in the loop and human oversight. And we've all seen the dramatic rise of agentic AI, and you can't turn around without hearing about agentic AI. And this has kind of led to this concept of the digital worker as well. Pretty much needing to be onboarded in the same way as a normal employee, but then performing tasks autonomously. But recently I heard about the concept of the cybernetic teammate, which I preferred. because that was really the idea of, you know, a cybernetic teammate being paired up with a human agent. And that way, A, you mitigate the ethical risks because you've got human oversight, and B, you can get the, you know, you can leverage the value and power of human and machine working together.
So if we're talking about this, sorry, Chevonne, you want to add? Or?
Well, I was just thinking actually, like with the ethical AI parts, like from an operational side, like, and how you embed that, it's really important, like capturing, when I was talking about when you're documenting your processes, you're documenting your data workflows, and you're mapping where those ethical AI pieces link in. And that's really important to do that when you're mapping out your processes, but also documenting like the RACIs for accountability and knowing exactly who those people are who are involved. And then obviously from a transparency perspective that you mentioned there, Suzanne, that then supports the transparency part. When you're documenting your processes and your procedures and your accountability, you know where these data sources are directly coming from and who owns them.
Yeah, because I was just thinking, is there some specific SIAM aspect to this? Because it's difficult enough if these are your own people, but if you have multiple providers,
exactly.
So anything for that from an ethical AI principle?
I mean, I think in terms of how you embed it, you know, you can hard code it or soft code it, but if you try to hard code it, it's tricky because ethical principles can be quite fluffy, you know, in some ways. You know, you've got, there are guidelines. You've got the UNESCO recommendation, for instance, on the ethics of AI, which I think is an amazing piece of value alignment if you think about that being accepted by all the members of the United Nations with all their differing views. It's very thorny. But even so, it's fairly fluffy, so you have to be able to, if you want to try and hard code it into contracts, you have to then make a translation, and you have to use, you know, standards and frameworks out there that can help you hard code it. And the other option is, of course, more soft coding, you know, creating literacy programs, workshops. You can set up a code of conduct. You can make sure that you embed it into your selection criteria for service providers. So I think you can try and hard code it, challenging, but there are frameworks that can help you do it. Or you can soft code it and just try and create awareness with literacy programs and codes of conduct, trying to create it across the ecosystem. And of course, SIAM facilitates that because it's got that, you know, holistic approach looking across all service providers to get a coordinated approach.
Excellent, thank you very much. So jumping a little bit sideways then from ethical, and we talked about risk, cybersecurity, I guess that kind of comes with AI when we're thinking about it. So Steve, can you kind of give us a little bit of an insight into what kind of threats and vulnerabilities we face with AI?
Yeah, so a lot of the threats of AI are kind of different to what you might expect. This idea of AI going rogue and managing all of us and take over the world, no, it just can't do that. If it does that, it'll be a long while. I think a lot of the threats from AI, before we get into the security side of it, are if you give it too much credit or you give it too much freedom, it will hallucinate, it will make mistakes. You know, think of AI as approximately correct and sometimes completely wrong in the same context. Okay? So knowing where you give your AI control limits the damage that it can do. And it's not a thing that wants to do damage, it's not a thing that has wants, it's just maths. And sometimes it works on inference, it tries to make a good guess, and sometimes those guesses are completely wrong. So in terms of, you know, we hear about agentic. If you're going to give an agent control over a process without oversight, the same way as you might give a recent graduate control without oversight of your systems, you need to set the boundaries very, very clearly for what it can do. And I'll give you a recent example. So OpenAI recently announced an integration with Figma. Isn't this amazing? You can just type natural language and create a design. I think within minutes it was exploited. It was hacked because this MCP server, this Model Context Protocol server, which is just a server, wasn't managed like every other server. So I think people just, number one, didn't put enough control over what can people type into their prompts. So a clever engineer injected some malicious code into the prompt. AI wasn't aware of it. it kind of suggested to the AI to do something other than it was supposed to do. And secondly, the agent was given access to the core of some systems, so it was able to go around and do bad things. So there was two things in there which I think, coming back to SIAM, all the SIAM governance would say, well, don't do that with your servers. Don't give people unfettered access to core systems. Be careful what you allow people to type into a system. Same as with a database where you've got SQL prompt injection in a text field on a website. You just need to put in the controls on that. And the other side of it is AI is trained on the internet. AI is fine-tuned and retrained and all this other stuff afterwards. And most of the time we don't have insight into that because it's done by somebody else, somewhere else. So I think all we can do really as users of these foundational systems, or these frontier systems as they're called, is try and make sure that the people who are either building upon those systems either have some idea of what the training set was or can give us some assurances of the controls that they've wrapped around it. Because again, AI doesn't really have much, it doesn't have intelligence the way we understand intelligence. So it doesn't know when it's making a mistake. And if it makes a mistake in the wrong environment, it can be catastrophic.
Yeah, and I like this concept of treating AI like a cybernetic teammate. You wouldn't do this for a graduate that starts in your organization, or you need to think about what would I let AI do until I've proven the boundaries and the values.
And I think crossing over into this idea of a teammate, the way I think of it is, as a human, I have limitations. There's things I can't do, things I'm always going to be bad at, that AI is really good at. And there are things that AI is really good at, or that AI is really bad at, that I'm good at. So the way we think about it is you've got an agentic team, each with strengths and weaknesses, and try and balance them out. Part of that team is people. Part of that team is just traditional old-fashioned, rules-based computer stuff to say, here's what the structure of this output should look like. It doesn't look like that, try again. And then ultimately you get to a point maybe where a human has to sign it off. So again, think of it as a team to mitigate the risks that are inherent in both the AI and in us.
Cool. Quick look around. No, all good. Don't doubt. Question over there.
A non-cyber question. It's the whole panel. So over the years, the biggest blocker, I think, in organisations of adopting a SIAM model is the mindset that it's so expensive because of things like back-to-back contracts. And how is AI in that layer impacting it? Are we seeing significant costs because vendors are getting more cautious, that type of thing?
Okay. Let me repeat the question for the audience in there. So an impediment to SIAM is often the perceived cost, and the question is basically, have we seen anything in AI playing in this cost element of improving or deteriorating that situation?
Did you want to?
Well, I can very quickly add a sort of bring it up a level. Just what we do is again, by gathering feedback from end users, we can identify where there's areas of waste in an environment, and the AI can synthesize that very quickly up into, here's something you may not have seen by yourself. So then you can take that to your vendors and say, did you know, actually this area isn't being operationally very efficient or isn't being very effective. Let's go and, I suppose, get a team together to fix that problem. And we've seen that in some of our deployments.
So is that having a knock-on effect, vendors charging that in their cost of doing?
Well,
Years ago we had value add, where we depended on our partners to give back into that ecosystem. But obviously, sometimes that value add was either not used or taken advantage of. I'm just wondering if you're seeing examples of our partners increasing their costs because of things that we're
So I'll repeat that question again first,
okay,
just for the audio in there and people in. So are we seeing vendors that are adding kind of an AI management cost as a value add, but is it a value add?
I think depending on how you do AI, if you're just taking a foundation model, running it through what they're calling reasoning, and then presenting that as your AI, that's very, very expensive. And actually, Even vendors don't know how to price that, so they probably overshoot to make sure that they're not taking a loss on it. If they're actually adding value by saying, well, let's look across the foundational model landscape and find out what works and what doesn't, it's probably worth spending a bit more on that, I think, because you get the certainty of it, and also, you know, we've been working with Gen AI for about 3 years. It takes a long time to figure it out. So if somebody's already figured that out for you, it's probably worth paying a bit more, I think.
I can add to that. So Steve and I, we actually did some work for a public sector client. And because Steve's company, his product analyzes AI data for incidents. So if we think about it from a supplier management perspective, I, you know, before all of this, for years, have extracted data from ITSM platforms and then manually in a spreadsheet filtered it by category, prioritization, root causes to find the trends. And I would do that from data that would cover a 12-month period, so because then I can capture the peak and off-peak seasons over the school holidays in summer and the winter holidays, just so that I could get a real good trend analysis on where some of the biggest issues were. And then I met Steve, and I was like, oh wow, you know, this sounds amazing. And he said, you know, send me the client's data. Obviously an NDA was signed and everything else. So I sent Steve 12 months worth of data. And I mean, I can't remember actually how many tickets there were. There wasn't many because they didn't log every ticket. So,
thousands.
Yeah,
Thousands
but it was thousands. And Steve sent it back to me and he said, Chevonne, I could only analyse around 200 tickets because all of the data was so poorly logged. So AI at this moment in time can only do so much. And obviously with the industry, particularly where I work, where I'm working with clients all the time with their data and ITSM platforms, and you know as well, okay, it's a mess. And you know, AI is only as good as the data it can analyse. So Steve, did you?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a point on that. I think you talk a lot about ticket categorisation and data quality.
Yeah.
Arguably, best practice has been bestowing the virtues of CMDB,
Yes.
business service awareness,
Yeah.
etc. for many years. Many organisations haven't reached that first level of maturity yet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wanted the panel to have an opinion on what proportion of businesses are going to be able to make use of some of this power of AI before getting some of those what you might call foundational elements in place first.
So I can tell you that, I can give you an answer to that actually. So obviously back in the day when you would analyse line by line, like information data, bits missing, and you're following up and you're meeting with people, the advantages of using AI, which, you know, when Steve sent me through the data, which took, you know, didn't take as long as it would have taken me to manually analyse, I was immediately able to go back very, very quickly to the client within a day and say, this is the situation, we can only do this much because of poor data quality. So step one, let's look at your practices, let's look at your procedures, how you're logging these tickets. Let's think about personal development for your service desk. Let's build out some training material, and that's exactly what we did. So the advantages of AI is that it will certainly help you analyze the data, but it will give you very quick recommendations on how you can improve that data.
Basically, it will tell you you're wrong very
Yes.
quickly.
Yes.
Can I just add on to that as well? Yeah, I just want to add to Chevonne's thing. For another engagement that Chevonne wasn't involved in, it was a big US energy utility, and they gave us about 100,000 tickets. And again, similar situation, only about 20% of them were usable, but within that we were able to get useful themes. So very, very quickly, within an hour or so, we were saying, it was, here are your main themes. But the big takeaway for them was train your service desk agents to type a few more, just
Words.
put more data in it. Instead of just
Yeah.
giving the email address to the person who opened the ticket and trying to remember what you were talking about, actually type in what the problem was and then actually, and it turns out with AI, the more data and the messier the data, the happier it is.
Yeah.
But if you've no data, you're just...
And I think it's one of the things
right.
that expectation management, that we shouldn't see it as a silver bullet. It basically shows us the deficiency of what we have, and
Yeah.
it allows us then
Yep.
to improve from there
Exactly.
with a higher ceiling or easier to achieve.
Yeah, we've been talking, I'm a bit of a dinosaur here, right, so but when I used to do ITIL V2 training courses, we used to
Yeah.
talk about CMDB.
Yeah.
We used to say a fool with a tool is still a fool, right? And I think that AI is probably in a similar kind of, we've got a hugely powerful tool, but without the level of maturity from the customer in the first place, then AI is going to hallucinate, fill in the gaps.
And you see a lot of, there's a lot of disillusionment, it's starting to go into that phase, isn't it, where there's a lot of disillusionment because we went from the kind of AI halo effect,
Yes.
it will solve all our problems, and now people are being faced with the reality.
But it's the equivalent of AI will do half your job. I'll have two of them then. It doesn't work like that.
But it does help you fail fast, so you can improve.
Sorry, I just want...
Yes.
I'm going to jump the other way.
Yeah.
If we pretend, this is more of a SIAM question, so SIAM governance question, and I'm still trying to work out the question in my head, so it comes out a bit clunky, bear with. If the service integration layer, operating the integration model and the governance around it, including ideally some nice fat dashboard with the data properly correct, I know data never is accurate, but just pretend, is there a future where the service integration layer is also the AI integration layer? So if we imagine 5 towers, making it up, and their data is good, and they may have, those suppliers may have AI operating well at their level. But if I could take 3 of those things, 3 of those towers' AI operations, outputs, and bundle them together, I could then achieve a much more mature set of management data. Is there any intention or an iteration of SIAM that includes the more technical AI integration across the supply chain to provide much, not just dashboards, but much better iteration?
I think Steve would be good at answering this because it's talking about multiple LLMs and different agents.
I think, and again, when we talk about AI in this context, we're talking about Gen AI. So there's a whole lot of other AI, which is, and we use a whole lot of that, which is repeatable, reliable. You can take it to the bank, all that kind of stuff. With Gen AI, what's actually happened, and it's only been in the last month or 2, there's a thing called an agent-to-agent protocol, how agents speak to each other. Google had one, AI had one, Claude had one, whatever. They're now starting to consolidate. So we're getting to a point where the industry is agreeing on how agents should speak to each other using JSON or whatever. I think it does make sense that SIAM would start to look at that and create a blueprint to make that work better.
Is where that's controlled rather than retained IT, so SIAM expands to include the use of AI.
So I think Matt's got a comment on that as well.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this AI integration also, but it's not just within the service management realm. We've got a large government customer that has an AI as a service. It's a big medical provider to the government, and they subscribe to an AI service that provides or assists doctors in doing medical diagnosis. Okay, and there's a whole like tokenized sort of payment model where they go off and they ask a question and they get charged so many tokens for that question. So you've got, and presumably it's partly trained on the customer's data as well. So I can see where you could have multiple focus of AI service providers maybe sharing data or talking to each other via agents, in addition to your whole, your service management, your IT service management layer, operating on tickets and CMDB, knowledge base, and all of those things that have faulty data too, right? Or mostly faulty data.
Yeah, the proprietary stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's an argument that AI is the integration layer. So you have an orchestrator AI that can speak to all these different systems using MCPs or whatever, and you'll have a single interface through that within your organization. How well that works is to be seen.
Yeah,
I think
I'd like to push back
from a
on
human
that because
oversight perspective.
I've heard that around service management tools 25 years
Yeah,
ago
I know.
as well, where we didn't
Will
know
it-
people
will it actually
anymore.
work? I don't know.
So, but yeah, absolutely, tool integration, different provider integration, and also the fact knowing what the left hand is doing so the right hand can do it better. And I think we're often missing that, where we have different technical solutions or different AI applications in different parts of the business. And if we could connect them, we could get a much better outcome. So I think it's a good question and a great example.
I think it's really important, though, to mention is like the legislation
Yes.
side.
Yeah,
I
because
didn't notice
obviously
that.
that's always running behind a little bit, but there is some legislation out there, and,
Yeah.
and there's been already before data protection. So just want to, we've got 5 more minutes to go on to
It's
that.
2 hours to
Just
go.
kind of make it nice complete. So Suzanne, you've got some information on legislation.
Yeah, there's a lot going on the legislation from obviously everywhere, but probably the major impact is the AI Act that everybody's talking about. And, you know, there's a lot of concern in Europe around the AI Act and a lot of discussion around what will be the impact. Will it, you know, help foster trust or will it hamper innovation? I think the concern is that if it becomes too bureaucratic, you know, when you see places like the USA that have got a very much a laissez-faire kind of deregulation approach, and, you know, that might make it difficult for investors in Europe. But on the other hand, I also think that, you know, there's kind of opportunity for Europe to be the adult in the room, and especially if there becomes a lot more pressure, societal pressure, and depending on, you know, if things go wrong, that's normally when a sense of urgency is created. So if there becomes this push for more responsible ethical AI, I do think there's an opportunity for Europe to be the adult in the room. But I think specifically from a SIAM perspective, one of the things, and I was triggered by the use case that you mentioned because it's in the medical world, which is so sensitive. I actually think that where SIAM can play a really strong role is because it's so strong on governance and it looks at it from that holistic perspective, because, you know, when we're delivering a service and we're using third-party providers, if we're using AI as part of our SIAM model, it's not often going to be an AI system that you've built yourself. It's often going to be from a third-party provider, and you can't hide with the legislation, particularly the AI Act, you can't hide behind, oh, well, that's not my system, so I'm not accountable for that. You can't do that in the AI Act. You'll be accountable for it. And I think the strong governance in SIAM can provide a really good vehicle to, you know, manage those third-party ethical risks so that you can, and in that way it enables innovation. SIAM enables responsible AI innovation because you can then do it in a way that enables you to do it in an ethical way and manage those third-party risks across the entire life cycle.
Okay, we've got a couple minutes left. I've got plenty of questions. It is such a broad topic. We were going to talk about sustainability. There's lots of other things in place. Are there one more question, probably? Or 2? Look at that.
10.
Not a big one, though. Just an easy one.
They're all big. They're all big.
These people have all been part of the new compendium that's coming out, Automation and AI, and some of the other people that are actually here at the conference as well. So definitely suggest you download that, you read that, and you provide comments, because these compendiums are changing. AI is changing, and they'll be around here for the rest of the day as well if you want to ask some really tricky questions about ServiceNow configuration. But for now, please, thanks Suzanne, Chevonne, and Steve.